Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there. Welcome back.
Welcome back, guys. As always, we want to thank everybody for their support over on Patreon. We couldn't do it without you guys.
Thank you very much.
Exclusives over there on a regular basis. And we're going to be developing in-depth a much bigger series than what we've done in the past. And we have done a lot of videos on Qigong, energy work, understanding how the universe works and how to create real, true magic. And magic, again, is just basically making the material elements that make up our world conform to your will through the practice of intention and focus.
Indeed.
And it's very real, and it's been known that it's very real for a very long time. This over here is off of EEARTS. There's 62 videos in the playlist about healing through energy work, Qigong, and the like. And these are things we've done over the years here and shared. And, I just would encourage everybody to delve deep. And again, we're going to create a new playlist over on Patreon as well. That's going to go into more depth and have a lot more details. So you may be very familiar, or maybe you're not, with the pentagram, the five-pointed star. It can represent the microcosm of man, which from another perspective is a macrocosm, because again, you are made up of trillions, really, of individuated units of consciousness, whether it's your individual cells, bacteria, all sorts of things living in the universe of your own physical body, which then extends outward into different densities. Again, we are multidimensional beings by nature, and there are aspects of us that are watching these aspects of us that are entrenched here in 3D on Earth from above and, kind of cheering us on.
Looking at us from a different perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what you see at the top of the star right here, the pentagram, is spirit. Now, what you have as spirit here can also be interpreted by other words, so other names. And so we're going to go into some depth with that. Tesla, perhaps the most brilliant person of the last several hundred years, maybe of the last several thousand years, incarnate into a human body. As you see right here, the mysteries of the ether. Yeah, absolutely. We understand that it was actually a relative of 47 that ended up being put in charge of all of Tesla's notes and all of his, thoughts. As, again, anybody that bucks the system is probably going to be in for not a smooth ride. And he wasn't. He didn't have a smooth ride here. And yet, I do think that he was far more brilliant than Einstein. In fact, the more you go into Einstein, the more you realize he might not have been that brilliant at all. And when you look at Thomas Edison, you might look at him and realize, wow, maybe he wasn't all as swift as we thought. Just perhaps a lot of plagiarism going on. And a lot of control system, narrative control. So his most suppressed quote, "Only the existence of a field of force can account for the motions of the bodies as observed, and its assumption dispenses with space curvature. All literature on the subject is futile and destined to oblivion. So are all attempts to explain the workings of the universe without recognizing the existence of the ether, or the Aether, or the Akash, or the Akasha. The existence of the ether and the indispensable function it plays in the phenomena. My second discovery was of a physical was of a physical truth of the greatest importance, as I have searched the entire scientific records in more than half a dozen languages for a long time without finding the least anticipation. I consider myself the original discoverer of this truth, which can be expressed by the statement, there is no energy in matter other than that received from the environment, the ether. And again, this is something that I think has been tremendously hidden and suppressed in the West, because the West has led the way. When we look at culture, when we look at geopolitical force, when we look at the religious structure, the West has led the way. But it was all known in the East, and it was talked about openly, in fact, in the East. Here's rare footage of a Qigong master demonstrating Qi. And for some people, the concept of Qi, Ki, Prana, Vril, life force, the ether, is silliness. And, they just can't believe it because it's not in their books. And again, the books are given to us by the system, most of them. You can find nuggets here and there. But when you look to this 3,000-year-old Chinese practice involves the mind, body, and spirit generating a strong energy called Qi. In different ways of spelling this. As defined by energy arts, Qigong is a form of gentle exercise which is composed of repeated movements which stretch the body, increase fluid movement, blood, synovial, and lymph, and builds awareness of how the body moves through space. These movements help the practitioner generate and harness the life-generating Qi energy, which can be used for self-healing, healing others, and manipulating the energy of objects around you. So, there have been instances. This right here is you might think it's just sleight of hand, but it's a Qigong master illuminating a small little light bulb with his thought, his intention, because he's learned how to gather the Qi and store it to use it in various ways later. And I think the key thing to take away also is the fact that when we talk about Tesla's quote, he's almost talking as if you take the Qi out, well, he really is actually saying, if you take the Qi out, everything that we see made of the elements is lifeless and dead. Think about when a soul leaves a body, and that body, which was so animated, all of a sudden becomes stiff as a board, and it's just a shell. It's a husk. There's nothing there anymore. If anybody that has watched this has seen somebody pass on, you'll know of that experience.
Right. It is the light just kind of goes away. It goes somewhere else. It doesn't go away. It goes just to a different realm.
Yeah, and in fact, there have been videos showing, what looks like a spirit leaving the body after accidents. There is an imperceptible weight. It's sometimes said there's 3 ounces that's unaccounted for. Again, this is reality. They just want to suppress it. This is Li Chen Yuan, and we've talked about, and we have his biography. It's said that he was born 26th of February 1677, or maybe it was 1736, or maybe it was 1840, and died in 1933. Cindy has been able to contact him, and so we've asked him questions about his practice. He was an interesting character. Again, he may have lived 256 years. When we asked him, he said he lived over 300 years. Again, when you are able to understand the ether, it contains everything, and storing this substance in our bodies. Can we add? That's the first question we should ask. Can we add more Qi, Prana, ether, life force to us? And the answer is definitively yes, absolutely. In fact, everything you do in life is either adding or subtracting the life force.
A lot of things inadvertently, the constant scrolling on the computers, the tablets, the phones, a lot of that's taking away or taking from your life force to feed another energy.
Yes, absolutely. I've done videos on talking about chi or prana promoting foods, and also chi or prana depleting foods. There's a delicate balancing act when it comes to being in a body in this world. There are certain substances that the body needs. There are certain substances that the spirit needs to keep going. And the reality is too that we can either make it harder on ourselves or easier on ourselves by our habits. A lot of chi depleting foods are going to be things that are processed. So again, avoid processed foods as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, they just make you sick.
When you looked at his biography and what did he eat, he ate a lot of ginseng. He ate a lot of berries. He would eat chicken and eggs. It was more occasional and more when people would invite them into their home and want to present him with a nice meal, because he tended to wander, and he did a lot of walking all his life. And so he traveled all over the place, and he gathered herbs, and he was, again, you could call him a witch if you want to go to our European heritage, and because he understood herbology, he understood the healing nature of certain plants, and also how they could balance out the elements in the body, because that is one of the things we need to strive for, is balancing the elemental makeup in our own bodies. And in fact, again, when you look to Ayurveda, that's what that is all about. It's again, healing through understanding the imbalances that can occur in what we would call our doshas. Doshas are kind of like elemental makeup of an elemental source in our body. It's the elemental nature of these different elements in our body that are often going way out of balance. And I would venture to say, in today's world, most people are drastically out of balance most of the time. You also have this gentleman here who was twice monitored for prolonged periods of time, weeks, by scientists, groups of scientists, like 30 at a time. And he didn't eat or drink anything for weeks. One time was 15 days. The other time was 20-something days. And they monitored all of his bodily functions, and he was just fine. He was actually exemplary. And he survived over 70 years with no food. That's what he says, no food. Now, he did bathe. Now, could he have possibly absorbed water and thus taken perhaps some other nutrients through absorption? It is actually something that is possible. And again, science will say, but it's not possible in that big in that type of volume. Of course, our bodies do absorb things. And so think about this when you're putting stuff on your skin that maybe is toxic, so much that feminine products, they're loaded with toxicities, and your body will absorb it, because again, if you go down to it at the smallest level, we are mostly vacuum. We are literally mostly vacuum, and thus, there's a lot of openness and a lot of emptiness that can be filled by toxic things, toxic environments especially, but again, things from makeup to shampoos, and certainly soaps and things like that. Every time we are using, people that still use antibacterial soaps on dishes and things, it's just stripping all that life away from you.
Yeah, we need that biofilm. That's a big part of our life.
Yeah, it's all about balance. Life is about balance. And we've done different videos, and there are many other people that have done videos on balancing your doshas as well. So yeah, he was 82 back in 2010. He has since passed on. I forget what his age was. It was pretty advanced. But again, he's not the only one that supposedly spent 70 years without consuming any food or water. When we go to Yogananda and his autobiography of a yogi, this is his master Sri Yugaswar, which actually wrote a book that talks about the cycle of the Yugas that many, and we have too, have quoted from. When his master was very close to death and Yogananda was like 100 miles away, his master, it is said, literally manifested a body out of the elements in order to talk to him and tell him to come back, because he was about to leave his body, to come back and be there for everybody when he left his body. Can somebody literally manifest another body? There have been cases, more than one time. There's been actually multiple documented times when people have been seen in bilocating. Is this really a possibility? I do think absolutely it is a possibility, and I do think that beings on a higher level understand this. And it really is all about mastery of the ether, the Akashic, the life force, and understanding that all the elements come from this force. When we go back and we look at the pentagram right side up, you see spirit or ether, the Akash. This is where everything emanates from and comes downward. It comes down. And so we can also view it as the descent of spirit or the ether into matter. And it really is. That is exactly what we are talking about here. The ether, the pure essence that the gods breathe, and the fifth cosmic element. It's really the first element and not the fifth. It's just that we've gotten these things distorted as time has gone on. And if you look to yoga and the Hindu tradition, all this is understood and spoken of at great length. Great detailed length. It's just hilarious, really, how the Western world wants to just simply ignore everything that's been written down in yoga and the Hindu tradition for thousands of years, because they understood quantum physics before the group that supposedly discovered it in our modern times started to talk about it in a non-distorted manner as well. Everything, from the fact that the universe is teeming with life, hundreds of thousands of humanoid different species in our particular galaxy alone, how the ether is really from which all the elements spring. I mean, everything is right there in yoga and in the Hindu tradition. And in fact, it's only made its way into the Western tradition through, again, the what we call the mystery schools, Hermeticism, Gnosticism, again, the Kabbalah. Just it had to be hidden because it went against the mainstream narrative. I think the takeaway here is that this is what the gods breathe. Well, that's talking about Qigong, is what that is talking about. And so, I did a video that was, this is basically, again, that EEARTS series of 62 videos. This one's called The Practice of the Immortals, Cultivating of the Life Force. And this is talking about the practice of Qigong. Interesting, too, as these people are practicing Qigong, they were doing a little bit of kind of like Kirlian photography. As you see, the life force that they're gathering is building up around them and is causing a distortion when they took the picture. So building energy balls, this is stuff that everybody can do. We can all do these things. It just depends on the person. It depends on how much you can focus, how strong is your will and intent, how clean is your diet. Are you basically laden with all sorts of toxic pharmacology and other forms of toxins, because the less clear the mind, the less you're going to have the ability to do this, unless you've done this all in past life, because we do bring that forward. It just has to be tapped in.
It takes a little time and effort, but anybody can do it.
Yeah, and not everybody's the same. And, again, you might have certain blockages in certain areas. But I thought this was a great video that I would, again, wish that instead of 1,700 views, this got, 1 million views. We had one video that got just about 1 million views, and unfortunately it was about a tsunami. So, again, this is the type of thing that changes lives permanently and changes literally perhaps a whole succession of lives, because we can build upon this. We can build upon this practice. Now, this is why the gods have these secrets, and when we're talking about the gods, we're just talking about different interdimensional and extraterrestrial beings. The ether, again, in ancient Greek mythology, it's referred to as the pure essence that the gods breathed, filling the space where they lived, analogous to the air breathed by mortals. Well, the air on planet Earth is not the original air. What we have is basically it's been terraformed in a negative way. They've lowered the amount of oxygen in our atmosphere. There are reasons why they're cutting down trees, while they're spewing chemicals and pollutants into the air all the time. The reality is, if we had the air here that we do when we're up in the silver and golden ages, we would live 10 times, 100 times longer, many, many times longer, much healthier. Our brains would function better, and we would be just as if the gods themselves. And yet that is what we find, whether we're looking at Chinese mythology, Greek mythology, or any of the myths and legends really from all around the planet. When we are outside of the Kali Yuga, the Dark Age, and when we are in our Golden Age, there's no difference between us and the gods, because we are living up to our full potential.
We have the ability to now. It's great.
Well, we're just starting now, because we were just basically leaving the Kali Yuga. So, this is just fabulous stuff. If we look at Timaeus, where Plato mentions the existence of Atlantis, the Greek philosopher speaks of the air and explains this there is the most translucent kind, which is called by the name of ether. And it also appears in Aristotelian physics, as well as the old electromagnetic theory of the late 19th century. For Aristotle, again, 384 to 322 BC, the ether was the material of which the so-called supralunar world was composed, while the sublunary world is made up of the known 4 elements. And again, this is really nothing new when we look again to the Eastern traditions like Taoism. When you look to our modern technology, we could look at the life force emanating from things. And it's curious to see that life force also emanates from things like keys and doors and houses and, inanimate objects. But the reality is, there really is no inanimate object when you get down to it. And this ether, this ki, chi, prana, vril, is really, now to distinguish, again, is there consciousness in a ki? Well, there's the potential that exists in everything that is manifest. And consciousness is that which animates. So again, from the ether, you have the 4 elements that come, and they are all moving at different rates of speed. Again, another Tesla quote, looking into the mysteries of the universe, think in terms of energy, and again, it's vibration, it's frequency, and it's also has everything to do with cultivation in our daily practice. And we're either adopting and utilizing practices that, besides the food, practices that are either going to be dispelling the life force from our body or building it in our body. And again, it's a matter of choice. So you can say in reality, like if you're mad at your car and you're yelling at your car and you say, just bleep and start, Mary Lou, because you've called it Mary Lou, there is a consciousness that does exist in inanimate objects as well.
Our bodies have certain metals in them that, help us function. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the bodies are reflective of a vehicle. The bodies are a vehicle for operating in this particular density. But we can see the life force around all things. I noticed when I first started to see the life force more clearly, I was especially seeing it around the trees and when we got to twilight. But here you can see it around different objects. And of course, the aura of a human, as you can see the chakras along the Taiji pole, illuminating there. So, this absolutely proves the fact that, the life force is very, very real. And it's been recognized as being real for all of our recorded history, again, depending on which traditions you're looking at. There is a difference between organic and non-organic, as organic tends to give off a lot more bioluminescence. And this is electromagnetism, and we are electromagnetic beings. So this is another reason why you want to incorporate as much organic food in your diet as possible. And if you've ever heard of the term the Akashic records, everything is in the Akash. Everything is in the ether. You could think of it as the ultimate cloud. Again, everything that the system does is mimicking that which happens naturally. So there is a cloud that every single thing that you've ever done gets uploaded to. And, when we have dreams, often what we're doing is trying to figure out things like, could I have done it better? Was there another way to go? What if I had made this other choice? As dreams are in many ways not just the uploading, but the processing of everything that we're experiencing here in 3D. And then when we leave the body, in the physical sense, we typically, normally, naturally go through a period of review. So, when you have that biblical quote that says, it's given once for a man to die and then the review, the review of the life. But that review is done by you. That's the big thing. It's not done by an angry, vengeful God. When you look at, Ma'at and the Egyptian weighing of the heart against a feather, it's again us that does all that. We are all part of this universal consciousness field. Lynn McTaggart wrote a great book called The Field, which is, again, we're talking about the same thing. It's part of the universal consciousness field. Everything in this reality comes from the ether and is just varying according to the frequency. We understand there's many different dimensions, and just like a radio dial, again, you just change that dial a little bit, you get a totally different channel. Now, everything is stored in the ether, so we can tap into that. If you can develop the ability like Cindy has to go beyond the physical and tap into that, then you could literally dial up anybody from Rudolf Steiner to Edgar Cayce to Jesus to you name it. Nobody is ever really out of reach.
It's not all fun. You do have to develop that ability, those sensitivities, and sometimes those sensitivities go into areas that are painful, but we all do have the ability to do that.
Yeah, so again, Wikipedia will say there is no evidence for the existence of the Akashic records, and rigorous scientific research in this field has seen little traction because it goes against them making money and controlling us, and that's the bottom line. So we know Wikipedia is CIA, FBI, etc. The Sanskrit term Akasha was introduced to the language of theosophy through Helena Blavatsky, who characterized it as a sort of life force. She also referred to it as the indestructible tablets of the astral light, recording both the past and the future of human thought and action. Now, part of why we might get different things when we channel is because each one of us has our own unique lens. And thus, when somebody is recording their experiences, it's coming through their lens. Somebody else, like let's just, take a Super Bowl party, and you got 5 different guys at the Super Bowl party. And, one guy ordered the pizza, one guy brought the beer, whatever it is. Their experience of how good the beer was, the pizza was, or the game was may very well, vary. You might have one guy that says, well, that was a blowout. And the other guy said, no, it was really a good game. And again, each one of us is totally unique. And that's the way it's supposed to be, because ultimately we all are part of this one universal field of consciousness, which extends beyond this manifest world. The manifest worlds that we see are just a tiny fraction of all that there is. And when you're referring to the Sanskrit, again, you're going back as far as we could go. We're going to find that the oldest and clearest sources are really coming from yoga, coming from the Hindu scriptures primarily. So, again, the Theosophists embrace this, and, the spiritualism movement that happened all throughout the 1860s, 70s, and kept going on, including groups like the Golden Dawn, by the way, in their rituals too, when they're using the Hebrew word Elohim, they're using it in the plural, because, again, many people understood what's really going on behind the scenes. It's just like it's stated in the Bible, to the masses, speak in parables, and to the inner circle, speak plainly. So understanding that all this is emanating from the ether, which is the first, this article has it right, it's the first of the 5 elements. It's actually that which stands outside of the elements, but from which all the elements come. You can learn to gather and store that in your body, and that is, again, the practice of Qigong. This is the Kabbalion, which is a famous work, which is a very, it's not a big book. I would recommend everybody read it. We've actually done videos on that. They're on EEARTS and on Evolutionary, talking about the different Hermetic principles, the 7 Hermetic principles. Again, mental transmutation, the mental universe, divine paradox, all these things. And then, of course, the fact that we have vibration, polarity, rhythm, causation, gender. All this, again, ultimately is really coming from the yoga, that we have great dissertations that have been given on, going back thousands of years. Suffice it to say, though, that in the truest sense, everything is about consciousness. This whole reality is a construct. It really is created by consciousness to have a different type of experience on a much heavier density.
Mm-hmm. And it's, when you put it all together, it paints quite an interesting picture.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's not a bad one. In fact, the sky's the limit. We've been living in the darkest of the dark ages, and we have been purposely kept from this knowledge because it has enabled the control system to leverage the playing field so the house always wins. And now we're starting to realize, wait a minute, there's all these other rules to this game which open up all new possibilities for ourselves to actually manifest outcomes that we want, instead of rerunning what the house wants the outcome to be time and time again. And this is from Franz Barden, and this is Initiation into Hermetics. We've done videos on this as well. If you want to understand a little bit more from the yogic point of view in a Western manner, I would delve into this one. As you could see, talks all about the elements and the different principles, including the Akasha and karma, law of cause and effect. I think it's fascinating that when we talk about the Greek idea that the gods are breathing a different substance, we could learn those techniques ourselves. And it's out there. It's called Qigong. So, you can also do it through yogic practices, the practice of yoga. Consciously breathing in the life force is just simply a matter of, at first, you will it, and you have to practice. And if you're not willing to dedicate hours, days, weeks, months, and years, you're not really going to probably get too far, unless you're somebody that's already basically an ascended master and have come back to the planet to just help others. Because there are some that this will come so easy to, if you just start to reawaken that practice within you. And Cindy does see this in many of the Vedic charts. She'll see people, often they have a really tough road, because their Vedic chart will show they don't have to be here. They've done it all before. They're just here to help others. And again, part of the way we help others is to tell them that we are so much more than what you would think we are. If you're going off the textbooks, if you're going by the science that they give us, which again is nothing but sales, yeah, you're going to have a very limited scope of what human potential is. It's far more than that. Again, going from, this is the quest of Ruru. The higher the sphere or plane, the more rarefied is the ether, which pervades it. And it goes into the Olympics, the Olympus, Mount Olympus, the home of the gods. When you look to the reality of things, when we go into fifth density and we are on the 5D plane of existence, we're just basically living off the life force. We have very, very few rare instances of humans doing it even during a Kali Yuga. But as we move upwards, we will be able to simply pull from the ether that which we need at that period of time. But right now there are practices, again in Qigong, for storing the life force. And you could store it in various locations in various ways. And we'll get into that with subsequent videos.
Mm-hmm. And as you store this energy and you process this energy, that's what makes the ability to heal people from energy to matter. It's what makes it happen. So it does take hours, days, months, years, but definitely worth it.
Interesting too. Talking about the four elements we're familiar with, earth, air, fire, and water. These were subject to change, and these move linear, in a linear nature. The ether itself, however, is not like that. It moves circularly. It actually moves, again, we see it throughout the cycles of time, as time itself is ultimately, it appears to be linear while we're in the body, in this construct that we have here, this holographic universe. But in reality, we're going through these circular cycles, which, again, have a depth to them. And so this is why each time we're going through the cycle, it's also a little different. It's never exactly the same.
Nope.
And this is the nature of the ether itself. So I hope that raises some more questions and maybe answers some questions. Look forward to your comments, guys. As always, stay warm out there. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.